There's a reason we're recording this podcast remotely because physical assault is worse when it's on camera.
Welcome to the Two Dads, No Supervision podcast. My name is Ian, and this is my co-host, Drew.
What's up, everybody? I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, so this is our first video. We wanted to make this video something where you could get a little background on us, understand the things that drive us, our motivations, and our values, so that when we have future videos, you can look back on it and you can have a rationale for the things that we're saying. So to start off, my name is Ian. I am 33 years old.
We're at that age where we have to question how old we are.
Well, everything after 2020 is but yeah, so I'll be 34 this year. We are going to be talking about three main things: politics, current events. We will be talking about Carolina Panthers, as well as some other sports stuff as well. And then parenthood or fatherhood, what it means to us, what we're going through, advice that we've had from other people, advice that we would like to give out, and then just answering your questions as well.
Yeah, I'm excited about all of this. So we'll discuss a little bit as we go along, but like Ian said, talking about P, man. We're talking about politics, Panthers, and parenthood. I'm really passionate about fatherhood. I believe it is one of the main missing ingredients to our society at the moment, and so I'm really excited about how we'll be able to discuss the value of all of that and what we're learning along the way. Ian and I both have a child that's about the same age, and so not together, but we both have children that are about the same age. So we're learning as we go along. We also come from unique perspectives on that.
I do think that we are more in tune with politics, political motivations, and just how the government works than most people.
Let's get started with it. This episode specifically, we're looking at introducing ourselves politically so you all can understand where we're coming from. This is the foundation of who we are, why we think the way we think, why Ian is wrong and I'm right on everything, and what we're going to do. He's already excited about this. And we're going to. The whole point of this podcast is to show that two friends can disagree on some things are very important, and we can disagree on foundational levels, but at the end of things we're gonna have a friend check, say, hey, you still like me, I still like you, and show that you can disagree agreeably.
Right. And the purpose of these disagreements aren't just to figure out who's right and who's wrong. It is to come to some sort of understanding at the end of these disagreements or conversations. I think that is very important to point out as we go through. There is going to be a lot of contention. There are going to be a lot of clips where you're going to see, man, that felt very heavy. Sometimes you have to have heavy conversations to get true understanding.
Yeah, there's a reason we're recording this podcast remotely because physical assault is worse when it's on camera. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. So, Drew, do you want to just kind of introduce your background in politics, how politically involved you are currently? And then also, can you give me your perception of the Democratic Party or just like a Democrat? Like when you think of Democrats, this is kind of your perception of them currently.
Okay, sure. Um, and if I get sidetracked along the way or um, forget to cover something, let me know. So, I'm Drew. I grew up in a very conservative household. I have very MAGA enthusiastic family members. I personally lean conservative on basically everything, and I'll explain why in just a second. I am not a MAGA enthusiast, although, as Ian knows, I agree with a lot of their policies, or a lot of their purported positions, and so that's kind of where I'm at with that. So my core foundation of everything is I am a devout Christian and a conservative Christian, and so I was a pastor of a small independent Baptist church for 5 years, and I have a life mission of starting many churches, and everything I do is because of my relationship with Jesus Christ and my belief in the Word of God and its authenticity and its completeness and its correctness. And so everything I do is filtered through the question of, does this bring glory to God? Is this correct biblically? And Ian is also a Christian. He's on the different a different spectrum or end of the spectrum of Christianity, and in theology, we disagree on some things, and so spectrum's maybe not the right word with that, but he and I will have disagreements with that.
Probably on the
And
spectrum anyway, so it's fine.
sorry, what'd you say?
I said I'm probably on the spectrum anyway, so it's okay.
Well, there you go. But we'll have disagreements on things, and those disagreements actually are foundational for why we disagree on other things politically in a lot of ways, I think. And so, for me, that's where I'm coming from personally. I have a really conservative view of Scripture and of the Lord, and my relationship with Him is integral to every part of my life. And so that's where I build my entire value system. And when it comes to the question of what do I think of when I think of a Democrat, I did vote uh, conservatively in this past election, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. But when I look at a Democrat, I have probably a different perspective than most people who vote conservatively. I see people on the other side of the aisle as people who are looking at a different aspect of the problem. We have similar goals in that we love our country and we want the people in the country to be safe and successful. When you look at the Democratic policies, I think, from my perspective, a lot of them are short-sighted, and they they help the small subsect of people, but they miss the general populace a lot of times. Uh, and that's just generally speaking. But I'm really good friends with a lot of Democrats. One of my best friends, he was is actually a deacon in the church when I was a pastor. He was a Democrat, and he and I, just like Ian and I, like we have conversations, but we respect each other and we love each other, and we realize, hey, we look at it differently, and I don't see Democrats as the enemy. I just see them as I, misguided is the word that comes to mind. Um, and that may even be too strong. I see them just looking at things as a different perspective, and oftentimes I believe they come to different, in my opinion, wrong conclusions on a lot of things. But often, Democrats are well-intentioned people who are compassionate and trying to help the ignored portion of society, and I truly respect that goal in the Democratic Party.
Definitely. How uh, politically engaged are you currently?
Yes. I've told Ian before, talking about politics is my biggest insecurity when we look at this podcast, the different topics here. I in high school, I had a blog called CT Talk. It was Conservative Teen Talk because uh, I was there at the bubble of the internet in the late '90s, early 2000s, and I didn't see much in that corner of the internet yet, and so I did pretty well with it. You could probably still find posts online. I had no idea what I was doing, and it was mostly really shallow stuff. But I got burnout from that. It was a lot of work that high school kid didn't have time to do. I had my own problems that I was causing for myself in life, anyways, and so I got burnout from there. And now I'm kind of like I'm a guy who gets really involved during election season. I watch and read everything, and I try to figure out policies and understand that. And then by the time November rolls around for the presidential election, like I'm done. I'm done with it all. I'm really cynical. I think both sides of the aisle are evil at their core, and I tend to just vote for the one that seems to be the less of the two evils. I I think, and Ian and I have talked about this. I believe, generally speaking, politicians will say what is popular at the moment to get the votes. They get the votes, they get elected, and then they just hold the position of power and do nothing. Nothing happens, and then the next election season comes around and say, "Oh, we're better than that last guy," and they go in and do the same thing. So I'm very cynical about all of it.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in and then we can kind of go for who we
Okay,
voted
sure.
for, why
I
we
wasn't
voted
sure if you
for,
wanted to call me
kind of.
names or anything yet. I
No,
was
no,
ready.
I think just understanding the background, how we view the other side, and just kind of where we are politically, I think is a good foundation for people to understand. So we will be trying as we go through certain topics to show you the research that we're going through,
Hmm.
and show you the sources that we're going through as well. So you can understand that while we do have our ideologies that are in the background that give us the interpretation of the data, you can see the data yourself and make interpretations that way as well.
Yeah.
So
So
I,
Ian, let me ask you,
yeah,
why? Why are you Ian? Why are you the way that you are?
uh, that's actually really funny. I ask my dog all the time, "Why are you the way that you are?" And my wife is like, "That is the dumbest question." And I'm like, "I don't think so. I think that is like such a foundationally important and introspective question, but maybe asking a dog is pretty stupid." Uh, so yeah, um, let's see. I grew up in the state of Washington. I grew up pretty in a pretty liberal, I guess, environment community. I actually have had a pretty wide spectrum of political stances that I've kind of dabbled into, tried to learn, and kind of follow. Right. So in high school, I was a huge conspiracy theorist. I was watching Alex Jones videos. I was telling my teachers that FDR knew that the Japanese were going to bomb Pearl Harbor, and allowed it to happen so that they could get into the war. Just like a bunch of out there conspiracies, especially for like a 15-year-old to be telling a teacher, right? And then I had kind of my libertarian phase. I looked at socialism for a while, and just like, if we want to help the most amount of people and we want to make sure that in the richest country on earth that the lowest common denominator of people are getting the care and um, safety net that they need to thrive. And I think that's pretty important. But I don't think that the way socialism goes about it is the correct way to do it. Um, so through there, I just ended up just gaining positions on each kind of topic. And based off of those positions, I do lean Democrat. I'm a liberal in the global sense of the term, meaning that I believe in a democracy. I believe that people should run the government and that people should be in charge of what the government says. And I don't think that the government should have complete control over media, over the things that you say, over a bunch of other stuff. And then position wise, I lean from Democrat to probably progressive, depending on the policy. Especially now with MAGA, where I don't think MAGA even has a policy on anything. So it ends up by default, if you just have a position on a policy, you're probably a leftist Democrat. Sorry, Drew. But the way that I perceive the MAGA party is that most of the people who vote MAGA are people who are disengaged with politics, and I think they are voting based off of culture and culture alone. And the issue that I have with that is that they're they're voting on cultural things that are not actually relevant. What happens is that because culture is their driving force of why they want to vote for something, it leads them susceptible to a lot of misinformation or a lot of like one-offisms. And the way that like I would say that is if you have someone at your church, Drew, and they are a bigot and they are hateful, and I take a video of that and put it on Twitter, and now everybody thinks that a conservative Baptist is hateful and bigoted and the worst, you would say that's not a fair representation. This is an outlier, right? Those things happen on a daily basis on Twitter and on Facebook when it comes to cultural stuff. So you'll ask somebody, "Oh, like I think the culture is deteriorating," and you'll ask them, "Oh, like around you like you go outside and you see these things," and they say, "Well, no, I have a good group of people around me." Oh, oh, you do? Yeah, I have a great group of people around me, and there are some things that have changed a little bit, but we're still good people, right? And most people say that, but then they go online and they see either things that are one-offisms or things that are like made up, where like, oh, kids are requesting litter boxes in school because they're identifying as cats, and then you have everybody on the MAGA like, oh my gosh, look at the culture that we have. The insane leftists are turning our kids into like cats. And it's like, oh no, that didn't happen, right? Or like, oh, they're eating the cats and dogs. Oh wait, no, that didn't happen, right? And that's
Or
one of
did
the
it?
issues that it, we know for a fact that like even JD Vance said, no, we made that up. But that is one of the issues with the advent of the internet, is that everything is now not only a national or a world issue, it's also a local issue too. So if there's a crazy leftist in the state of Washington, that is not indicative of our culture. That's a one-offism. But if you post that on Twitter and it gets a million relikes or retweets and everything else, and you have Benny Johnson and you have Charlie Kirk and you have the libs of TikTok and everybody like, oh, these are then you get inundated with crap like, what is happening in the state of Washington? What is happening in California? Oh my gosh, this is what the liberal government wants to turn my community into, right?
So that's
And I
the key. That's the key to viral media is no one cares about the normal stuff. They only care about the extreme. And so that's why, was it the 80s when mainstream media became a 24-hour news station, which really just turned into, hey, what's the craziest thing that's happening right now? And then that evolved into, hey, the internet gives everyone a voice. And so, what's the craziest thing that we can post that will get attention, that someone will share, that'll get more attention, and then everyone will think that that's happening everywhere, and it's this unseen enemy that is coming to get us.
Right.
But it's viral media.
Well, and that, that that's one of the things that makes me so sad about this is that I know, like a lot of people who vote for Trump or a lot of people who have these like concerns, they feel like these are real concerns. This is a heavily like this is much more prevalent than it actually is, and they ended up voting against what is going like policies that are going to end up helping them. And I understand that it's a real fear, but I think that fear is just driven by a lot of like misinformation and lies. Um,
So I get where you're saying right now it's just extreme examples that are being posted online and social media, all of that stuff. And between you and me, our current president relies too heavily, well, between you, me, and the internet, relies way too heavily on viral videos to make assumptions and policies. But that's another conversation. I do have a question though. At
yes.
what point is it a problem? Like, when do we say, oh, well, if it hits 5% of the population that are contributing to this subsect of thought, then it's dangerous and we need to confront it. Or if it hits maybe 20%, or if half the country thinks that it's okay for kids to be using litter boxes, now it's a problem. Like, at what point do you say that it's a problem and hate culture is something that is worth voting on?
So I think culture is always worth something like, to be voting on. I think that you just have to be like you have to understand what truly is fact, right? Like that's the big thing. I understand voting on culture. That's part of the voting criteria that I have as well. I do think that if you're talking about like national things, I do think that it's going to depend on the topic, and it's also going to depend on what is the uh, like what is the negative outcome that comes from this? So if we want to talk about something that's just happening in California and it doesn't really happen throughout the United States, hey, let California be California. That's why we have local governments. That's why we have state governments, and that's why we have representation of each state. If it is something
So
where it's like,
I
oh, go ahead.
I can respect that, saying, "Hey, let local government be local government," and I agree as long as that is equally implemented on both sides. So, like, if one side says, "Hey, we're gonna use the Bible as part of our curriculum," then fine, let Oklahoma or whatever state wants to do that. But if California wants to be like, hey, we require that everyone has blue hair when they go to the seventh grade, then okay. If you don't like it, move. Okay. My thought, the reason I'm bringing that up is a really sensitive topic that has been given to states' rights. That's abortion, and it's okay for the Democrats, if California wants to do whatever, or if Oregon wants to allow any sort of drug um, to be legal, fine, legalize all the drugs. But if states remove or say, hey, abortions are illegal here in our state, if you want one, you got to cross the border. Suddenly, that's a problem. Or if a state says, hey, we require voter ID, then suddenly it's a problem. So um, I agree. Let local, state governments and county governments and city governments be their own government, but it's got to be equally implemented across the board. Like, it's got to be allowable for both sides. What do you
Yes
think?
and yes and no. I do think that when you talk about abortion, you're talking about something that was viewed as a right. So when that was stripped away, um, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, it's no longer a right. At that point, yes, states can kind of determine, where they want the cutoff to be and everything. But when you have things that are established rights, there needs to be um, a unified thing across the board, right? California can't say, "Hey, we don't believe in the Second Amendment," right? No, because that is a right that you have, right? So I think that is the difference. I do think that if you I think right now, yes, if states want to vote on, different measures of abortion and everything else, it is not codified in law. It's not settled as case law that it is a right for a woman to choose, right? That makes perfect sense. But if it is a right, if the Supreme Court or if it is codified by the government of saying, hey, this is one of the rights that we are going to recognize, then no, you wouldn't be able to say, hey, it should be up to the states. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you think it should be part of the Constitution, basically, um, and the amendments therewith that the United States federal government has voted on and codified into law. Anything outside of that should be fair game. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that anything outside of that should have um, states' purview where they are able to vote on things. Still, then you can bring that up to the Supreme Court, right? Because the Constitution, much like the Bible, is written in a way that is supposed to be a breathing document, right? So that it isn't just for the people who were around in 1776, but it is for us today, right? So taking it up to the Supreme Court, where they are going to be able to hear arguments and understand, basically create their interpretation and say, actually, this is something that falls in, this is already something that's in the Constitution. This is covered by the 14th Amendment, or this is covered by the Fourth Amendment, or, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so the Supreme Court basically just agrees with the Constitution. And of course, English being the language that it is, there's subjectivity in interpretation on a lot of things. But as long as it can be proven that it's part of a constitutional right, then states should be hands off and go with it. But if it's not part of the constitutional rights, then the states should have the ability to vote. Is that what you're saying?
I think that if you are going to have something in the Constitution, that has to be the baseline of what we have um, state to state, because you can't have people just moving states either for economic opportunities or out of necessity, and they lose rights.
Well, shouldn't that be part of the balance, the way in? I think the United States is a great experiment where we get to see the fruits of different policies and the combination of those policies, and where you can see states that are economically prosperous and based off of the policies that they've implemented, whereas others struggle because of the policies they've implemented. And then the other states should say, hey, look, it's working for California. We should implement it here in Missouri or whatever.
Sure, but those aren't rights; those are policies, right? Because we're not citizens of a state. You're not. You're not a. Your citizenship doesn't say South Carolina. Your citizen or North Carolina. Your citizen. Your citizenship says United States, right? So if the United States is going to say you have this right, it doesn't matter which state that you're at. You should have that right, whether it's freedom of speech, whether it's freedom of religion, freedom of bear arms, due process. You should have that right no matter where you go to in the United States.